I'm going into a 4-week mini cut with my diet with the goal of dropping 10 pounds. What tips do you have for making this as successful as possible?
The old mini cut.
Mm-hmm.
This
4 weeks, 10 pounds.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple things that popped right out to me right there when I was reading that. Okay, mini cuts versus mini bulks. We hear this bulk cut stuff. Like, what does this really mean? The first thing is like, first off, a mini cut for 4 weeks. To me, that doesn't sound like a mini cut. The second thing is to expect a 10-pound weight loss in 4 weeks.
That sounds miserable.
To me, that sounds like a lot of weight. It's not that it couldn't be done.
Yeah.
Right. But that, well, number one, it doesn't sound like a mini cut. Number two, 10 pounds in that amount of time is a significant amount of weight. And again, not that it can't be done, but if we're truly trying to lose weight or body fat, which is why you would do a mini cut. Like, I don't know, if the goal is to lose water weight, why even call it that?
Yeah.
Just dehydrate yourself. But you won't be doing that for 4 weeks. So what's the return on investment there? So anyways, I think there's a few things to unpack here.
Well, I would hope kind of you're reassessing with this person of, if you're really thinking of doing a 4-week mini cut, I would hope or assume that this is because there's a very specific reason, right? Where someone's like, oh, I'm going on this trip to Hawaii and I want to look my best. But if you're just doing a 4-week mini cut just because you think it's a good idea to do a 4-week mini cut, it's not a good idea. You're not going to really get the benefit from that cutting phase. So one, reassess, does it need to just be 4 weeks, or can you actually lengthen it out? Can you plan a little bit more? Like, we were talking with a client who had some goals about getting really shredded, and she was talking about this very short range, this short time frame, like for this summer and how she wanted to look, all this stuff. And we were talking more of this like year plan of like, what is this going to look like over the long haul? So that's one thing. Reassess, does it need to be a 4-week mini cut? Did you see this because you think this is like people are preaching this, that this is your whatever 4-week challenge, mini cut, whatever you want to call it. Is that really what you want to be doing, should be doing to get you to whatever that goal is? Once you find that answer, if the goal is like, okay, I know it might not be the best, I think I want to cut to, again, look good for this trip in 4 weeks. I mean, truthfully, just do a lot of the basics that we talk about. Make sure you're managing your movement, make sure you're obviously managing your nutrition, things like that. This is where, again, we wouldn't push to do 10 pounds in a month, but you can start to leverage like cardio, things like that in addition to that. But again, I think the main answer is reassess is, why are you doing a 4-week mini cut?
Yeah, I would just look at it and go, 4 weeks is not a mini cut to me. It's way longer. I just kind of like define what bulks and cuts, are. A bulk basically is in your surplus, and your goal there is to gain muscle without gaining too much fat, or if no fat at all.
Yeah.
Like, the ideally is we're building muscle and we're not building any fat, right? The ultimate would be we're actually building muscle during our bulk and losing fat.
Yes.
So we're actually getting leaner. And the cut would be we're working in a deficit where the goal is to bring down body fat without losing any lean tissue, right? And so those two are very specific things with we're looking for some very specific outcomes. And if all you're doing is measuring the weight on the scale, you're already you need to get in a better headspace about this.
Oh, yeah.
So, and when I look at like bulks versus cuts, like, what does that mean? What are the things that you need to know? Well, first off, this is going to be, we just talked about being in a deficit. Well, to be in a deficit, you also have to understand, like, what is your totally daily energy expenditure? Mm-hmm. What is your TDEE? And so what is your baseline, right? Like, for what you need to maintain. So that takes a little work. You have to do a little understanding. Super easy to figure out this number. Go to rdfguides.com, and we have a free guide there for how to calculate this. And it's like, oh God, I got to do math. If you're doing quote unquote cuts and bulks without having some level of awareness specific to the math at some point in your journey, then all you're doing is throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. And that might work once, maybe it works twice, but it's not a good long-term strategy. So I'm just putting that out there. But a bulk would be, let's say, somewhere between the neighborhood of like 300 on the low side, maybe to as many as, I don't know, like 800 on the high side in terms of a surplus. Mm-hmm. That's going to be very dependent on the individual and what they're willing to put into it, what their current total daily energy expenditure is. I mean, if your TDEE is 1,500 calories, right, and you're eating right now somewhere around that 14 to maybe 16 a day, you're kind of hovering, and you threw 800 calories on top of that, expect to gain some body fat, right?
Yeah.
And have a really full
some
gut.
GI issues.
Yeah, I'm like,
So I think like on average, it might be like 500 calories or whatever, say 300 to 500 conservatively. And then on the deficit side, I would say it's the same, but it is going to be dependent on what your start point is or what your need is and where you're currently eating. So, or you're intaking. So if we're looking at this, how would I organize this? Well, first off, I've already said it. I was really upfront about this. Like a 4-week cut is not a mini cut to me. You are on a deficit for quite a long time, and you should expect there's going to be a significant amount of metabolic adaptation there, which is going to stop at some point with regard to the ideal result, which would be to lose body fat without losing muscle mass and or performance or your ability to maintain the muscle mass. What I mean by that is you don't have the energy, you don't have the nutrients in order to power your workouts as well as recover from those.